Hello everyone. Happy fucking turkey, Christmas, and Merry New Mint Condition year. It's been pretty hard to be consistent in my appearances though, so I decided to at least do something I like to call fucking Nintendo Park. So then, controllers, am I right?
Nintendo. It's the company everyone, even your grandmother, knows about. When I was a wee lad getting myself into gaming, I always owned a Nintendo console. From the Nintendo 64 to more recently, the Switch. But one thing I always noticed was the tad and true tradition of changing up the controllers every blue moon. Unlike many people, I actually like that. While Sony and Microsoft barely change the controllers, with one of them giving up, Nintendo goes all out every time they release a new controller for the new system they are about to release. But to see that, we have to go to the very beginning. First off, the NES.
I actually never owned one.
But I do remember playing the original hardware at a friend's house and seeing this odd rectangle called a controller while the competition's alternatives were more spherical design-wise. To start off, the NES controller only had two action buttons, the A and B buttons. In the middle, it had the classic start and select buttons, which are basically dead now, and had at the time of its release a very innovative button which we would all know as a directional pad, or D-pad for short. Originally, this button actually came from the Game & Watch version of Donkey Kong and seen the importance of this little guy. Nintendo patented their D-pad design, which is why other companies' versions of the damn thing looked and were very different. I can't say much on the controller because I barely used one, so I'll just leave it there. Next up is the SNES Controller, which in my opinion and many others, this one just feels really good on the hand when playing whatever games. At first glance at the SNES Controller, oh me oh my, more buttons. While Sega and Atari were over there pissing on a penny, jamming more buttons on the face of their controllers, and one of them fucking it up. Nintendo instead gave us the traditional 4-button diamond layout, transferred over to start and select buttons, and the D-pad. Most of the front-face buttons are very clicky and satisfying to press, though the start and select buttons feel less satisfying. They are still nicely made and have more quality put into them than most third-party controllers. They didn't just stop there. Oh no, for they also introduced the shoulder buttons. These two buttons are just so good. They are nice and satisfyingly clicky, something I wish more controllers would do in the current day, and when playing games such as Mario Kart and F-Zero, they are nice and responsive. I personally love this controller, even though I was introduced to this on the SNES Classic. I did hear the plastic is a bit different from the originals. Besides the cable input, they are pretty much identical. Though many prefer the European and Japanese iteration of the controller, with the different colored buttons, I actually like the dark and light purple colored buttons a bit more. I don't know, it feels more original to me.
Okay, so Nintendo made two amazing controllers, and the next best thing is to fuck it all up. As games evolved more towards 3D graphics, the controllers had to do the same to better suit the change. Here comes a Nintendo 64 controller with an all-new joystick to better move the little fucker on the screen. This was very innovative, but awfully built in my opinion. I remember the N64 controllers I owned always broke when it came to joysticks. Either it would just stop responding, or it would just dangle on the controller, making it hard to play any game, to be fully honest. The controller was designed with these three handles to give the user 3 ways to hold the damn thing. I personally don't like it, because it forces you to move your hands mid-game just to press a button or move the joystick. Then we have a downgrade back to just two action buttons, the A and B buttons. We have the short-lived analog buttons which were used to move the camera on games like Super Mario 64, which were then later replaced with a second analog stick. We also have the shoulder buttons, both L and R. Then there's the traditional D-pad. Oh, I almost forgot, we also have the deck in the back, which I personally never really knew what it was even for until I got a Rumble Pack. And it was a bit odd, but I never even thought this would actually become a big thing in controllers until very recently. I'm actually quite happy that controller even exists, because without it, companies wouldn't have motivated Nintendo to make a far better controller. Not again!
This controller features an all-new action button layout with the buttons revolving around the main button most people would use, that being the A button. For the shoulder buttons, I guess we're missing one. Playing on this controller with only 3 shoulder buttons is a bit odd, and I would sometimes find myself trying to press the non-existent LZ button. Okay, on the back, oh boy, we have analog trigger buttons. These are pretty comfortable to press, and in my opinion, better than the Switch's non-analog trigger buttons. We finally got the proper joysticks, with one of them being made for termites and a D-pad to accompany it. When I used this controller, I would admit it was pretty comfortable to hold. I wasn't that comfortable though, using the action buttons due to the odd layout Nintendo decided to go with this time. But maybe with a couple more uses, I may end up loving it or just hating it. Hey, if people are still using this controller, Nintendo must have done something right.
So while the GameCube did a little bit of Nintendo had to make a hit, so the Wii was born.
Finally.
To accompany the console was the Wii Controller, or the Wiimote for short, Nintendo's first and successful-ish attempt at motion controls. When the Wiimote wasn't being thrown across the living room or used as a weapon, it was being used as whatever the developers wanted it to be. From hitting a bat to driving a car, but that's not enough. Much better. Apparently Nintendo and third-party companies thought, hey, plastic shit, am I right? A whole lot of them. Since the Wiimote only has a D-pad to move around, and nunchuck was created to accompany it, giving us a joystick and more shoulder buttons. When first introduced to this, it was a bit weird. While other controllers had their own 2 joysticks, and they weren't separate, I was able to at least get used to it, and I kind of ended up actually loving the whole 2 separate controller idea. There were a couple of problems that I had with the controller, like the controller's movements not being registered properly or at all. With a successful console, the next best thing is to make a sequel.
Psych!
Here we have the Wii U. Huh. 3 to 4, I guess. If you think the GameCube was a failure, just look at a picture of the Wii U and you'll see what real failure really is. So yeah, the Wii U controller, as you can tell, was designed as a tablet/controller, and the second screen, which from what I've seen, was pretty underused, but I have seen some pretty good uses of this gimmick, like in Star Fox Zero, with you being set in the view of the pilot on the controller. We also have the 2 joysticks being positioned in the top rather than in the offset layout Xbox and later Nintendo would actually go for. We got a camera, NFC reader for amiibos, nice trigger buttons, and shoulder buttons. Then we finally have the diamond positioned action buttons and the classic Nintendo D-pad. I've actually only used this controller once, and it was quite weird playing with this big boy, but surprisingly comfortable considering the size. I don't have much to say, but I do see the Wii U growing on people over time, kind of like with the GameCube. Then Nintendo came in full force with their next console, the Nintendo Switch. For this one, they had to think big and decided to get all of their previous consoles and duct tape them together. Unlike Sony's consoles, they are at least duct taped pretty well. I really love the Joy-Cons, and compared to earlier Nintendo controllers, they are a bit more tame. The controllers have the traditional button and joystick layout. They also kept the NFC reader, which I barely even use. Nintendo also decided to implement motion controls on the Joy-Cons, but in a smaller role like aiming and attacking. The motion is very responsive and far more superior when compared to the Wiimote. They also included an all-new rumble technology, which they named HD Rumble, and probably one of the most underused features side by side with the IR camera, and I've only seen these 2 features utilized to the fullest on 1-2-Switch from what I know. Unlike other controllers, these act as individual ones as well. Don't get me wrong, this is a great idea, and unlike other consoles, you get 2 controllers straight out of the box. But they are a bit too small for me to use comfortably. The shoulder buttons on the individual Joy-Cons is a bit too small and really hard to press. That Nintendo included these shoulder button rails just to make it easier to press them. But these are also a problem if you put them on the wrong way. Another problem I have are the button sizes being a bit too small for a big boy like me. It feels very cramped when I play multiplayer on the road or out of town. Oh yeah, then there's Joy-Con drift. Did I mention Joy-Con drift? All in all, they're not perfect. It's pretty alright. So that's about it. Nintendo has to go all out with their next new thing. Every time Nintendo decides to make a new console, they decide to reimagine the controller with it. And that kind of brings excitement to there, really. Because it leaves me wonder as to how and on what I'll play. Are they always perfect? Don't make me laugh, but they do innovate, and they also always bring something new to the table, something that not many companies like Sony and Microsoft always bring to the table. Sure, Sony just brought in the DualShock and other controllers such as the DualSense, and Microsoft, the Xbox One controller, I guess. Not much after that, really. So yeah, that's about it. It's been fun. But I gotta go and hit the hay. And so, see you in another millennium.